So in this video I'm going to show you how to put a DCC decoder into a Lima Class 37 which wouldn't have had a socket or wouldn't have come DCC ready supplied, so we're going to have to solder one in. So you're going to need some tools. Soldering iron for a start, some solder, some wire strippers, you can use scissors if you're good, but use your wire strippers, some cutters, and also the decoder itself. I'm using a Hornby 4-function decoder here, but any similar Bachmann or lens would work just as well. So first of all, let's have a look at the train itself. So to take the Lima chassis off, these are just on clips by the doors. So if you just bend it ever so slightly all around the train and unhook it from the clips. There we go. So inside, it's very simple. What we have is a motor, a rear pickup, and some wires. So the wires are powering the right and the left sides of the train for the positive and negative on the electrics. So what we have here, these two here are the right rail pickup going to the front of the motor, and this is the rear pickup, which is on a black wire. Now all the wires are black, which makes it a little bit tricky because you don't know which one's red and positive, but the right is positive and the rear left is negative, so it's just black. So we're going to get our decoder and we're going to attach it to these wires, and it sits in between the wires and the motor. So next, if we have a look at our decoder itself, make some space here. I'll open one of these up. This is a Hornby basic decoder, 8-pin normal DCC decoder. They only make two standard ones, an 8 and a 21. They do a 6, but we're using an 8 here. So this is an 8-pin decoder. And the wires we have, what we actually have, take the little covering plate off, and we have the decoder itself with a little socket like that. Now we're not going to need the socket, so we're going to end up chopping it off. But before we do that, let's unravel these wires, because we need to unravel all these, and sometimes they twist them up or coil them round, but be very careful not to knock any of the wires off of the board itself. You just have to unstretch it and have a look. Now with these decoders there are quite a few wires that we're going to see in different colours. The ones we're going to be interested in are only 4 wires: the red, the black, the grey and the orange. Now when we unravel these, you can see we've got all these 8 wires there. And this is the bit we need. So we're going to chop the decoder off, the socket off, because we can't put that in. We could buy a harness, but I'm just going to solder it in, and we're going to wire this all in. So we'll do a bit of prep work first. We'll prepare the decoder. So the way we're going to do that, first of all, we're going to cut the decoder plug off. So we can just get a pair of cutters and chop the plug off like that. Don't need that anymore. Now we need to separate the wires we need. So we need a black. So we'll find that one. We need a red. We need a grey. Be careful because it is a white, so don't get confused. We need a grey one. There's the grey. And we need an orange, and there's the orange. These used to be very orange, but in this particular one it's quite a light, almost pink wire, but that is the orange one we want. So these other 4, these would be used for lighting and other things on these decoders, because these are very old trains. You could wire them for lighting if you wanted to, but as they come, they're just wired for the motor, so we're not going to use these, so we're just going to fold these wires out of the way. We could cut them shorter, but we'll just fold them out of the way just in case we ever want to come back and add some lights in later. The purple wire, which is always separate on its own with these decoders, is again another function one. We don't need that, so we could actually use that to tidy up these other wires and just twist them out of the way. So now we've got these 4 wires that we need. We're going to have to strip these back because we need to do some soldering. So with our wire strippers we can adjust the end. If you have adjustable ones like this, they're very good instead of the fixed ones you sometimes get. We can adjust it roughly to the size we need and then strip the wires back. You probably want to go about 5mm just so you've got enough to solder. Need to adjust these again, a bit smaller hole. There we go, let's try that. There we go, so you see it's coming away nicely. Then we can see the ends and we can just twist them together so we end up with a nice end that isn't going to fray apart. So we can do this with the other ones. So we'll put this to one side for a minute and let's have a closer look at the train. So if we look at the motor, we can see a few wires going into it on the side. We've got 2 wires at the front here, this black one down the bottom, and from the back rear pickup on this gold connector, if we follow this along, that is going to the other side of the motor on this contact here. And we also have another wire from the rear going down to the bogie, which is going to the front. So we've got these 2 wires to the front and 1 to the rear. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to unsolder these joints. And if we look closely, you can see they're soldered currently on these pickups here and here. And there's also a capacitor in between, this white capacitor, so we're going to have to chop that out as well. So we've got a completely free motor. Then what we're going to do with the decoder, with our wires, is we're going to take the black and the red and wire those to the pickup wires, and the orange and the grey to the motor. So the orange goes to the front contact here, and the grey goes to the back contact here. And if the way to remember these, if orange is a kind of shade of red and grey is a shade of black, so that's where everything fits in. So we'll prep the motor now by unsoldering the contacts from the motor. So when our soldering iron is ready, we're just going to melt some of the solder holding these wires in. And it may take a while depending on how good your soldering iron is, how hot it is, and how much solder they've used. But just warm it up. Try not to lean too much on any other plastic because it will just melt and you'll end up ruining your train. So we'll just wait for a second if you hold the soldering iron onto the solder until it starts to melt, and you might get a bit of steam coming off, a bit of smoke coming off. And once it does that, you'll be able to pull the wire out of the way. There we go. Now remember to try and keep your wires together where they go. So this is the left rear pickup, this is the right front pickup, and the right rear pickup here. So these are going to be our red wires, this is going to be our black wire. We're going to need to chop this capacitor out of the way because we don't want that interfering with the DCC signals. Now you can just sometimes bend and twist these off, but if you've got a pair of cutters, just chop it off anyway, it's a lot easier. There's our motor prepped with our wires off and our capacitor off. Got one of the wires here, I've got another wire down here, and the black one is going to be over there, which is going to be our rear pickup for the left side. So what we're going to do now is attach the wires together and prep them for the decoder. You might need to clean them up a little bit because on the end they might have blobs of solder on, and to make it easier when you re-solder them you might want to strip them back and start again. Okay, so now we're going to attach the red wires off the decoder onto the red pickups, or the right rail pickups on the train. So we're going to bundle these wires together and twist them all up and then solder them up. Now if you've got heat shrink tubing for stopping short, so if all these wires join together, then obviously use some of that. I'm just going to use tape in this case. But obviously you notice the wires will only just reach, which is why with your decoder, once you've soldered it, it's probably going to sit somewhere here on the weight. We'll have to insulate this because you don't want all the components shorting out over the weight. So we're going to join these up and then see where we are. We get some solder. Careful you don't spill hot solder onto the body or the chip, so just be careful where you're soldering, and again depending on how good your soldering iron is, you might have to take a while getting it kind of spot on. We have our contacts all soldered into the motor and the decoder itself. Obviously looks a little bit messy. We're going to tidy that up and make sure the body fits on. Now we can put the body back on. Now some of these Lima ones will only go one way round, they have a middle catch, so this one actually goes the other way round. Line it up with all the clips, clip down, and we're ready to go. Now these will be on a default decoder channel of 3, and when you're ready to go, pop him on the rails. If he doesn't blow up straight away, and you'll know because a load of smoke will come out, you can then try with your controller. New decoders will be put on channel 3, so set your controller to that and see what happens. At slow speed, some of these can sound a bit crunchy, it might just need a bit of oil, but when they get up to speed they'll be fine. Thanks for watching.